In the heart of a barren desert, far from the glass towers and highways of modern civilization, lay a forgotten village called Qasr al-Hayat. It was the kind of place that never appeared on maps, where the sun scorched the earth by day and silence claimed the night. But Qasr al-Hayat held one thing that even time dared not touch, a mosque known as Masjid Abbas. No one knew how old it truly was. Some said it was built by a saint who came from the mountains. Others whispered he wasn't just a man, but a soul sent to protect something buried beneath the sands. The mosque had no towering minarets, no golden dome, and no fame. Yet 5 times a day, when the call to prayer echoed from its ancient walls, even the desert winds seemed to stop and listen. Birds would hush. The animals would pause. And the villagers? They would gather, not out of habit, but reverence. To them, Masjid Abbas wasn't just a place of worship. It was a guardian. A silent witness. A miracle in stone. But peace, like sand in the wind, never stays long. One summer, when the ground cracked under the weight of the heat and water was scarcer than hope, something strange happened. Trucks appeared. First, they were just a rumor. Someone saw tire tracks near the old wells. Then came the men in black suits. Outsiders. Unsmiling. With files, blueprints, and satellite phones. They didn't greet anyone, nor did they attend the mosque. Instead, they met with government agents in secret and spoke about development. Hotels. Roads. Shopping centers. Progress. And then the word spread like wildfire. Masjid Abbas had been marked for demolition. The reaction was immediate. Elderly men who had never raised their voices wept in the streets. Women clutched their prayer beads tighter. Children, who used to laugh as they raced through the mosque's courtyard, now sat still, listening to adults speak in hushed, fearful tones. The land, they were told, was not owned by the village. A corporation had documentation, signed and sealed by state officials, proving it belonged to them. Plans were already approved. Construction would begin in less than 2 weeks. The imam of the mosque, Sheikh Abdul Qayyum, was a gentle man in his 60s with kind eyes and a spine made of faith. He gathered the villagers beneath the mosque's date tree and spoke with a calm that seemed borrowed from another world. "We will not fight with stones or fire," he said. "But we will not let the house of God fall. If this land truly belongs to Him, let Him be its defender." That night something shifted. For the first time in decades, the entire village stayed awake. Children recited Qur'an beside their mothers. Men prayed Nafil. Dhikr echoed under the stars. The mosque's worn walls glowed faintly under the moonlight, like they were listening. No one left its courtyard. They believed, with trembling hearts, that if God would send a sign, it would be now. At dawn, when the call to far was made, a strange silence blanketed the village. Not just silence, stillness. Even the wind had stopped. The birds did not chirp. The trees didn't sway. The world, it seemed, was holding its breath. Then came the noise. From the edge of the village, engines roared. Bulldozers rolled in, escorted by police vehicles and trucks filled with construction gear. The men in suits had arrived. Their expressions were hollow, mechanical. Their steps heavy with arrogance. To them, it was just another job. Just another outdated relic in the way of something modern. When they reached the mosque, a supervisor raised his hand. "Start with the outer wall," he said. The moment the bulldozer's claw touched the sandstone, the air cracked, not like thunder, but like something ancient waking up. A hissing sound rose from the ground, soft at first, then louder. The workers froze. Dust spiraled in the air. Then came the scream. One of the guards shouted and dropped his weapon. Something had wrapped around his leg. A snake. Not just one. Hundreds. Thousands. They poured from the cracks in the earth, long, dark, gleaming. Some were small and fast, others thick as a man's arm, with shimmering black scales and glowing eyes. They didn't strike. They moved in unison, surrounding the mosque, blocking the machines, twisting around the wheels of trucks and slithering over the blueprints the men had dropped. Chaos erupted. The workers fled. Police officers shouted into radios. One man collapsed. Another swore he saw a snake look him in the eye and shake its head. And then, just as quickly, silence returned. The snakes coiled together, forming a living wall around Masjid Abbas. Inside the mosque, the villagers trembled. They watched through wooden cracks. Sheikh Abdul Qayyum stood still, hands raised. Allahu Akbar, he whispered. He has sent his army. The men in suits didn't come back that day. Or the day after. The snakes, they said, disappeared before noon. No tracks. No bodies. As if they had melted back into the soil. But the fear remained. At sunset, when the Imam addressed the village again, his voice was firmer than ever. Masjid Abbas is not protected by us, he said. It is protected by the one who hears our prayers and sees our fears. Let no one say again that miracles have ended. A new reverence filled the village. Children no longer played games in the mosque, they prayed. Teenagers who mocked religion now volunteered to clean its steps. People from nearby villages came asking, "Is it true? Were there really snakes?" But something more began that week. A change. A whisper that this mosque was not just ancient, but sacred. That perhaps the man who built it long ago, the one the old people called the saint in the sand, had never truly left. And on the seventh night, a stranger arrived. Wrapped in a dusty cloak, he walked with a wooden staff and eyes that did not blink. He stood at the gate of the mosque, staring at the earth, and said only one thing. They've tried once. They'll try again. But next time, the earth won't just whisper, it will roar. And then he vanished into the desert. The villagers stood in silence, hearts heavy with both awe and fear. Something ancient had been awakened. And it was only the beginning. The morning after the stranger vanished, Qasr al-Hayat awoke to a strange light. It wasn't from the sun. The skies were overcast, heavy with clouds that hadn't rained in years. Yet the entire village glowed faintly, as if the air itself had absorbed something, a memory, a warning, or perhaps a lingering prayer. The mosque's dome shimmered in this strange hue. It was soft, almost invisible, but undeniable. People stared at it without speaking. Rumors traveled faster than the wind. By mid-afternoon, outsiders had started arriving in battered cars and dusty bikes, journalists, thrill-seekers, conspiracy theorists. Some came with drones. Others came with stories of visions they claimed to have seen from afar, shadows circling the dome, a voice calling from the earth. The villagers let them look but warned them. You don't come here to film. You come here to believe, or you leave. The corporation, humiliated but not defeated, launched a second attempt. This time, no bulldozers. No loud machinery. Just men in clean shirts, armed with legal jargon and printed agreements. One of them, a senior field manager named Dylan Nash, knocked on the Imam's door at sunset. He was polite. Too polite. We understand this mosque is important to your people, Dylan said, his eyes calm but cold. We'd like to propose a solution. We build around the mosque. You keep your prayers. We build luxury villas for pilgrims. Spiritual tourism. It's a win-win. Imam Abdul Qayyum didn't blink. You want to sell what God built? No, Dylan said, lips twitching. We want to share it. The Imam leaned in, his voice low. This house was built by a man who gave up everything, food, sleep, family, to serve his Creator. He buried his name in the sand so the mosque would never be about him. And you want to add a parking lot beside his grave? For a second, Dylan's calm faltered. I don't think you understand, he said. This isn't just religion anymore. This is politics. This land is valuable. The Imam smiled sadly. That's what the Pharaoh said about the Nile. That night, the village gathered again. Not in fear this time, but in readiness. The courtyard was packed. Candles burned softly. Old men wept openly, not in grief but gratitude. Teenagers who once mocked religion now stood silently behind the Imam. Women sat in rows, holding Qur'ans against their chests like armor. Something deeper than resistance had bloomed, conviction. As the Imam led the congregation, a sound drifted across the desert wind, the rustling of sand, like something moving beneath it. No one said a word. They all heard it. A deep, shifting sound, like the earth sighing. The next morning, Dylan Nash did not report to his office. His rental car was found abandoned 2 towns over. Inside it, nothing but a map with one word scratched into the leather dashboard. Return. The corporation fell silent. But the silence didn't last. 1 week later, a white SUV rolled into Qasr al-Hayat bearing a new kind of danger, officials from the capital. 3 men in crisp shirts and hard faces. One carried a briefcase. Another, a small device that looked like a scanner. They introduced themselves not with names, but with titles. Survey Commission, they said. We're just here to observe. The villagers didn't trust them, but Imam Abdul Qayyum allowed them to inspect the outer perimeter. You may walk where feet have walked, he said. But you may not dig where souls have rested. They walked around the mosque for hours, measuring radiation, magnetic shifts, soil samples. Their equipment beeped, flashed, then shut down. One device showed an error no one could explain. Pulse anomaly, subterranean signal. The man holding it turned pale and whispered, This isn't scientific. It's something else. That night, one of them, a man named Gerald, insisted on walking behind the mosque alone. The others warned him, but he laughed. You people act like it's haunted. He smirked. He didn't return until sunrise. When he did, his eyes were sunken, his shirt torn, and his hands shaking. I didn't see it, he mumbled. I felt it. Something watching. Breathing under the ground. Like it knew me. Like it judged me. Gerald resigned 2 days later. The official report stated, Survey inconclusive. Recommend site preservation pending further analysis. But something else was happening in Qasr al-Hayat. The dry well at the edge of the mosque, the one that hadn't held water in 37 years, began to shimmer. Children were the first to notice. They threw stones and instead of hearing thuds, they heard splashes. When they called their parents, the adults found it half full. Clear. Cold. Fragrant. The villagers called it Ma al-Baraka, the water of blessing. When people performed wudu with it, their limbs tingled. Some claimed their chronic pains eased. One blind man said he saw flickers of light for the first time in 12 years. The story of the miracle well spread. Within days, seekers began arriving from neighboring provinces. Some camped in the desert. Others walked beside the mosque's walls, whispering du'as into the cracks. Among them was a man named Nathaniel Green, a skeptical American researcher with a background in anthropology and a habit of mocking religion. He'd heard about Qasr al-Hayat through an academic circle obsessed with modern mysticism. He arrived with notebooks, cameras, and doubt. For 3 days he recorded everything, the people, the mosque, the well. But it was all coincidence, to him, mass hysteria, desert illusions, manipulated faith. Until the night he saw the lamp. The old oil lamp inside Masjid Abbas had never been lit in years. It was cracked, forgotten. That night, without anyone touching it, it began to burn. Soft at first. Then brighter. Nathaniel was inside the mosque, reviewing photos when he looked up and saw it. Flames danced inside it without fuel. And then he heard it. A whisper, not outside, but inside his chest. Some truths can't be studied. They must be surrendered to. He dropped his camera. That morning, Nathaniel stood before the village, his voice shaking. I don't believe in your God, he said. But I believe something is here. Something older than language. Older than doubt. He didn't leave that day. He stayed for weeks. And on the 40th night, the same day a white crow was seen circling the mosque, Nathaniel Green took a new name. Abdul Haq. The servant of truth. And while the villagers welcomed him, deep beneath the mosque, something stirred again. Something that had not moved in 100 years. And it would not sleep much longer. The night after Abdul Haq accepted his new name, a strange quiet settled over Qasr al-Hayat. It wasn't fear, nor was it peace. It was something heavier, like waiting. Even the animals in the desert kept to themselves. The stars above the village seemed lower, closer, as if they were listening. Inside Masjid Abbas, the old oil lamp, now called Shirag al-Hifazat, the lamp of protection, continued to burn without fuel. Its flame pulsed softly, not with fire but with something else, something alive. It cast a golden glow across the walls, and villagers swore they could see verses of the Qur'an shimmering faintly in the stone whenever they looked too long. Imam Abdul Qayyim didn't speak much that week. He spent most nights sitting cross-legged before the lamp, eyes closed, his lips moving slowly in prayer. It was as if he were listening to something the rest could not hear. Then came the knock. It was close to midnight when someone pounded on the mosque's outer gate. Not gentle. Not respectful. Loud. Demanding. The villagers gathered cautiously. When the door opened, a man stood there, his face half hidden beneath a scarf. Tall, muscular, with a roughness in his stance. He introduced himself as Colonel Rami, a retired intelligence officer. "I was sent by no government," he said. "I came because I had a dream." They let him in. He spoke little. Ate little. Slept even less. But he spent hours walking the mosque grounds, his hand grazing the stone walls, murmuring to himself in languages some didn't recognize. At night, he'd kneel near the well, eyes closed. Once, a child asked him what he was doing. He answered, "I'm listening to the roots." The old ones? They remember everything. One evening, Colonel Rami requested a private meeting with Imam Abdul Qayyim. "What I'm about to say," he began, "you may choose to believe or not. But you need to hear it." The Imam nodded, calm as ever. "There was once a file," Rami continued, "classified, hidden deep within military archives. It spoke of sacred lands scattered across the earth. Places not marked on maps. Sites that react when threatened. Not earthquakes. Not volcanoes. Something else. An intelligence beyond us. Masjid Abbas was on that list." The Imam didn't flinch. "And now? The file disappeared 2 decades ago," Rami said. "But last month, I started dreaming again. Same dream I had as a young soldier, a mosque glowing in darkness, a serpent made of light, and a voice saying, 'Tell them, do not awaken what sleeps.' So I came." The Imam placed his hand on Rami's shoulder and whispered, "Perhaps it is not sleeping anymore." 2 days later, another sign appeared. The earth behind the mosque began to tremble. Lightly, rhythmically. Not enough to cause fear. Enough to be felt, like a heartbeat under the soil. Scientists called it seismic noise. The villagers called it something else. "The guardian is stirring." Late one night, the mosque courtyard filled with a thick, glowing mist. It had no source. It did not roll in from the desert. It rose from the ground itself, soft, silver, and scented with something between musk and jasmine. Anyone who entered the mist said they felt lighter, clearer, as if a burden had been lifted. In the middle of this mist, a child named Nisaba collapsed. She had been sick for years, weak lungs, fragile bones. Her mother screamed as she fell, but before anyone could reach her, the lamp's flames surged, just once, brilliantly. When they lifted Nisaba, she was breathing. Clearly. Strongly. The illness that had haunted her for a decade was gone. Just like that. After that night, the people of Qasr al-Hayat no longer asked for proof. They were living it. But as miracles rose, so did interest from the outside world. A team of foreign researchers arrived under the banner of a documentary studio. They came with drones, LiDAR, and thermal cameras. Though they claimed neutrality, their actions said otherwise. They offered villagers money for access, tried to film the prayer sessions in secret, and even attempted to bribe a teenage boy for a piece of stone from the mosque's foundation. Imam Abdul Qayyim gathered them all on the third night, and spoke gently but firmly. "This mosque is not a museum. Not a myth. It is not here for your theories or your cameras. It is alive. And it does not want to be touched. Most of the team left in frustration. One, however, stayed. Her name was Claire Donovan, an agnostic filmmaker from Seattle who came seeking a story and found herself weeping in the back row of the mosque during Far. She stayed long after the crew left and asked the imam if she could stay and just listen. He agreed. But the next danger didn't come from skeptics. It came from a man with belief, twisted, radical, and drenched in ego. His name was Tariq Salim, a self-proclaimed preacher with a large following online. He believed the miracles at Masjid Abbas were bid'ah, forbidden innovations. That the people of Qasr al-Hayat had turned a mosque into an idol. He came with cameras and bodyguards, live streaming every word. "Do not be deceived by serpents and lamps," he yelled from the square. "This is shirk. This is a trick of Iblis." But when he stepped onto mosque grounds, his voice caught. His skin paled. He dropped his phone. His bodyguards watched helplessly as he staggered backward, grabbed his chest, and fell to his knees, eyes wide, staring at something no one else could see. He didn't speak for 3 days. When he did, his only words were, "I was wrong." The imam forgave him, but warned the village. This was a test. More will come. That night Abdul Haq had a dream. He stood in the desert outside the mosque. The sand beneath his feet moved like breath. In front of him stood a man cloaked in light, face hidden. "You were not sent here to observe," the figure said. "You were called to protect." Abdul Haq woke trembling. He now knew the miracles were not the climax. They were the warning signs. Beneath Masjid Abbas, something ancient had awakened. And it was watching. After Abdul Haq's dream, something changed in him. His presence became quieter, more deliberate. He no longer asked questions. He simply watched, listened, and obeyed the rhythm of the mosque, as if the air itself had become a teacher. He began sleeping in the courtyard near the lamp of protection, his journal resting on his chest, pages filled not with research, but with reflections. One entry read, "When doubt is loud, truth whispers. And this place? It hums." The village, too, felt a shift. No one knew how to explain it, but even the animals seemed to obey a hidden rule. Birds avoided flying over the mosque. The well never dried. Children stopped misbehaving near its walls, as though an invisible presence watched over them. And then came the letter. It arrived in a black envelope, left at the mosque gate without a name. Inside was a single sheet, typed in formal language. It came from a new district official, Deputy Commissioner Reynard Kessler, recently appointed to oversee land disputes and strategic redevelopment across the region. The letter was a warning. Construction on the land would begin again. All religious activity beyond daily prayer was to be suspended. All miracle-related gatherings would be considered unlawful. No signature. Just a stamped insignia. That evening, the villagers gathered under the glow of Chirag al-Hafizat. Imam Abdul Qayyim read the letter aloud, then slowly set it on fire. The flame consumed the page silently. He said nothing else. He didn't need to. But the warning was real. The next morning, black vans arrived, government-marked, armored, windows tinted. Kessler himself stepped out, flanked by armed officers in tactical gear. He was a thin man with surgical precision in his posture, and a strange stillness in his eyes. He didn't greet anyone. Didn't even look at the villagers. He simply walked straight into the mosque courtyard like he owned it. The villagers stood frozen. Some women clutched their children. Others whispered verses under their breath. Kessler walked past the lamp of protection, glanced at it once, and scoffed. "Old tricks for old minds," he muttered. Then he ordered his men to begin site preparation, ground scanning, soil samples, demarcation. They brought machines. Not bulldozers this time, drills. Quiet, surgical. But something rebelled. The moment the first probe touched the ground near the well, the sky darkened. Not with clouds. With birds. Thousands of crows, black and wild, swarmed out of nowhere. They filled the air with such ferocity that officers screamed and dropped their gear. Equipment fell. Cameras shattered. The birds didn't attack. They just circled, shrieked, and vanished. But it was enough. The soldiers froze. Kessler's voice cracked as he barked orders no one obeyed. A wind picked up, one that didn't belong to the season, and the sands began to twist in spirals near the mosque wall. From inside the mosque, Abdul Haq stepped out slowly. His eyes weren't afraid anymore. They were clear. Calm. Focused. "You were warned," he said. Kessler stared at him, lips twitching, unsure if he should laugh or pull his weapon. The ground rumbled. Soft at first. Then deeper. Not like an earthquake. Like something breathing beneath them. The officers ran. Kessler didn't. He stood still, shaking, eyes fixed on a single point, the well. A crack had opened next to it. From within, a faint bluish light poured upward, swirling like fog. Then a sound emerged, low, harmonic, like a forgotten chant echoing from the belly of the earth. Kessler dropped to his knees. He didn't scream. He didn't speak. He simply knelt, stunned, eyes wide, watching the light curl toward the lamp. Then he collapsed. He was carried away unconscious, never returning. Later, a military report would mark the incident as psychological breakdown due to desert conditions. But everyone in Qasr al-Hayat knew the truth. Masjid Abbas had defended itself again. That night, Imam Abdul Qayyum received a visitor, an old man dressed in faded white robes, leaning on a staff. No one saw him enter. He appeared beside the lamp as if stepping from the flame itself. He whispered something into the Imam's ear and handed him a bundle wrapped in cloth. When the Imam unwrapped it, he found a book, thick, ancient, its cover bound in cracked leather, etched with Arabic calligraphy. The Book of the Veil. Imam's hands trembled. He had heard of this book only in legends, a manuscript said to be passed down from saints who hid not their names, but their secrets, waiting for the right heart to open them. That night, the Imam opened the book before a handful of elders, Abdul Haq and Claire Donovan. The moment the first page turned, the lamp of protection pulsed brighter. A fragrance spread, one not found in nature, a mix of oud, rain, and memory. The first words read, "This land is guarded not by stone, nor by fire, but by the vow of a soul who refused to die." Page after page revealed fragments of a story, a saint who had once walked barefoot across continents, searching for a place to bury not his body, but his prayer. A man who had asked God, "If I vanish, will you still hear me?" And the answer came, "If you vanish in my name, I will make the earth remember you." The saint's name was Ahmad Baksh. And Masjid Abbas was his answer. The final pages glowed slightly, even without light. They contained a warning. When the greedy dig, the earth will grieve. When the blind threaten, the light will speak. But when the believers forget, the veil will lift, and judgment will fall. The room fell silent. Then came the voice of Claire, barely above a whisper. "What does it mean, when the believers forget?" The Imam closed the book, gently. "It means we are not safe because of the miracles," he said. "We are safe because we remember. The moment we stop remembering, the protection ends." The next morning, the villagers awoke to find a new inscription carved above the mosque gate. No one had done it. No tools had touched the wall. It was just there. It read, "This house belongs to the one who never sleeps. Let no hand test his patience." And beneath that, in faint gold, "And Allah warns you of himself." For the first time in decades, the people of Qasr al-Hayat truly understood. This was no longer just a village. No longer just a mosque. This was a battlefield of belief, and something holy was preparing for its final stand. 3 days after the inscription appeared above the mosque gate, the village of Qasr al-Hayat fell into an uneasy calm. Not a single vehicle came. No government officials returned. The phones stopped ringing. The outside world had gone silent, not because it had forgotten, but because it didn't know how to understand what had happened. What do you do when technology fails, laws fail, and something older than either stands untouched? The people of the village began to live as if every breath was sacred. Every step toward the mosque was slower, gentler. The courtyard of Masjid Abbas, once merely a space for prayer, had become a living heart. At any hour of the day, you'd find someone there, a woman silently reading Qur'an, a child watching the lamp, a man staring at the sand as if expecting it to speak. Imam Abdul Qayyum barely left the mosque anymore. He had grown thinner, his beard more white than gray, his eyes lined with something deeper than fatigue, reverence. He told no one, but he had been dreaming again. Dreams of fire beneath stone. Of wings stretching over the village. Of a voice saying, "When the final name is spoken, the veil will tear." He didn't know what the name was. But he knew they were close. One evening, Claire Donovan returned from the desert with news. She had wandered farther than usual, lost in thought, filming the landscape. But what she found was no ordinary rock or bird. It was a man. Buried. Only his face visible, the rest of his body submerged in sand. She thought he was dead, until his eyes opened. He spoke one sentence before vanishing into dust. "Tell the keeper that the seal is unlocked." She didn't understand, but the Imam did. He gathered the elders, Abdul Haq, Claire, and Colonel Rami. Together they stood before the well where the earth had once opened and the blue light had emerged. The Kitab al-Jil was placed on a stone pedestal nearby. The lamp of protection burned higher than usual, casting long shadows on their faces. The Imam opened the final page of the book. There was no text. Just a circle drawn in ink. And in the center of the circle, a word. A name. Wahid. They all looked at each other. Abdul Haq trembled. That's the name I took when I accepted Islam." The Imam nodded slowly. "And it's also the name the book was waiting for." Suddenly the air changed. Not in temperature. In pressure. In memory. The sand began to stir. A low hum rose from the ground, and the well began to glow again, but this time, the light didn't stay soft. It turned sharp. Bright. Like a beacon. Piercing the dark sky. Then it came, the voice. Not from above. From beneath. It didn't speak in Arabic. Or English. Or any known tongue. It was a sound that vibrated in the bones. In the teeth. In the soul. Some collapsed. Others wept. Even the birds in the trees flew away. But the meaning was clear. The seal is broken. The guardian has returned. Choose your side. The next moments passed like hours. The earth behind the mosque cracked wide open. But there was no destruction. From within, a figure rose. Cloaked in light, either man nor beast. A shape woven from shadow and flame. It had no face, only eyes like polished onyx, deep and ageless. It didn't speak. It didn't need to. The Imam bowed his head. "This is the Ruh Wali," he whispered. "The soul sent by God. The one who was buried alive to guard the trust. He is not alive. Not dead. He is awake." The villagers gathered behind them slowly, drawn as if by instinct. The figure moved forward. Not walking. Gliding. Until it stood before Abdul Haq. Then it stopped. And raised its hand. Abdul Haq stepped forward, unable to resist. His heart raced. His knees shook. And then, the figure touched his chest. Light. Everywhere. The courtyard disappeared. The people disappeared. Only Abdul Haq remained, surrounded by stars. And the voice came, for him alone. "You were not born for belief. You were born to remember. To carry the truth when others forget it. This mosque was never in danger. But the hearts of men were. Carry the flame. And remind them." When he opened his eyes, he was lying on the ground. The figure was gone. So was the crack in the earth. Only the lamp remained, now twice as bright. And beside it, the Kitab al-Jil had closed itself. That night Abdul Haq gave his first sermon. He didn't read from notes. He didn't recite verses. He spoke from a place none of them could see. He told them the story of the saint. of the sacrifice, of the flame that burns not in oil, but in obedience. He told them the lamp would one day dim. The book would vanish. The miracles would cease. But what mattered wasn't the signs. It was the memory. If we remember, he said, then God is never far. And so the people remembered. Weeks passed. The outside world lost interest. The headlines vanished. The government never returned. But the villagers stayed. They taught their children what the earth had whispered. They lit candles around the mosque every night. They read from Kitab al-Jil until one morning, it simply disappeared from its place. Gone. Without trace. But no one panicked. Because they understood, the book was never the source. It was the reminder. And it had served its purpose. Years later, when Abdul Haq would be an old man sitting by the now cracked lamp of protection, a child would ask him, "Is it true the mosque was once guarded by snakes and fire?" And he would smile and say, "No, child. The mosque was never protected by snakes or fire. It was protected by a promise. And somewhere deep beneath the earth, in a place no drill could ever reach, the guardians slept once more. Waiting. For when the believers forget again." Welcome to a powerful and emotional story of faith, transformation, and unexpected love. This is the story of Lena Muller, the daughter of a wealthy German tycoon, who discovered a new path after an unexpected experience in Jayapura, Papua, and a life-changing encounter with a man from Kopassus. How did a woman raised in luxury end up embracing Islam? How did she find herself falling in love with a soldier devoted to duty and faith? Let's dive into this incredible journey. Lena Muller stood on the balcony of a grand building, overlooking the bustling port of Hamburg. Since childhood, she had known nothing but glitter and comfort, growing up in the luxury provided by her father, Oliver Muller, a hotel magnate. Lena was no ordinary girl. She was intelligent, polished, and held a business degree from one of America's top universities. Her future, in everyone's eyes, was destined to carry forward her father's empire. Yet Lena often felt something was missing. Despite all the wealth, accolades, and expectations, her heart longed for something deeper, something she couldn't name. One day, Oliver asked her to manage one of their luxury hotels in Jayapura, Papua. He believed real-world experience would sharpen her leadership. With some hesitation, Lena agreed and flew to Indonesia. Jayapura was unlike anything Lena had known. Gone were the polished boardrooms and sterile luxury. This was a place alive with energy, culture, and a pace of life she wasn't used to. She struggled to adapt, grappling with unpredictable supply chains, staff issues, and a vastly different environment. But slowly, she began to understand how to manage people and adapt to a world outside her own. Still, she felt a lingering restlessness, a sense that something in her life remained unresolved. One bright morning, hoping to clear her mind, Lena went for a run in a nearby park. The fresh air and greenery gave her a rare sense of calm. But that peace was short-lived. Suddenly, armed men wearing masks emerged from behind the trees and blocked her path. Without a word, they dragged her into a vehicle, weapons pointed at her. Lena's heart pounded. This wasn't just a robbery, it was a calculated kidnapping. They knew who she was. They wanted ransom from her billionaire father. Fear gripped her, but she tried to stay calm, recalling all the mental strength and basic self-defense she had learned. But nothing could prepare her for what came next. Gunshots rang through the air. Chaos erupted. Her captors panicked, scattering in confusion. In the midst of it all, Lena saw them fall one by one, neutralized with precision. From behind the smoke, a man stepped forward in military uniform, calm, composed, and powerful. It was Captain Subrata from Kopassus, Indonesia's elite special forces. He approached her, extended a hand, and said in a firm yet gentle voice, "Are you okay?" Lena nodded silently, still in shock. This man, this stranger, had saved her life. Subrata led her to safety. Along the way, he engaged her in light conversation to ease her nerves. His demeanor was unlike anything Lena had seen, disciplined yet deeply human. It wasn't just the rescue, it was his presence that stayed with her. In the days that followed, Lena visited the Kopassus headquarters to give her statement. Subrata was always there, patient, calm, respectful. During one of her visits, she saw him preparing to pray. His movements were serene, filled with devotion. Curiosity stirred within her. "What were you doing just now?" she asked. Subrata smiled. "I was praying. It's how we connect with Allah. It helps us find peace, even in chaos." Lena, who had lived in glittering comfort but never inner stillness, felt something shift inside her. She began asking more questions. And Subrata answered them, not with pressure, but with quiet faith. As days turned into weeks, Lena found herself drawn more and more to this new world. She learned the basics of Islam, how to pray, what it meant to believe, and what faith could offer a restless soul. But it wasn't just knowledge she was gaining, it was peace. A peace she had never known. One evening, after months of learning and quiet reflection, Lena sat under a sky filled with stars. Subrata was nearby, gazing upward. Lena walked over and said softly, "I want to know more. I want to embrace Islam." Subrata paused, deeply moved. "Converting to Islam isn't about rituals or words," he said gently. "It's about the sincerity of the heart." "I've felt it," Lena replied, her eyes unwavering. "Every teaching you've shown me brings calm to my soul." The next morning, they visited a quiet Islamic boarding school. A kind imam greeted Lena, asked if she was ready, and she nodded without hesitation. She said her Shahada, the declaration of faith, with tears in her eyes. And in that moment, Lena Muller became something new. Whole. At peace. But peace would not come without sacrifice. News of Lena's conversion reached her father. Enraged and disappointed, Oliver flew to Jayapura. He couldn't comprehend the transformation his daughter had undergone. "You've disgraced this family," he said. "You're no longer the director. Don't come back to Germany." His words stung deeply. But Lena, even through her tears, stood firm. She had made a choice, not just of faith, but of identity. Her path was now her own. Life in Papua wasn't easy, but it was sincere. And Subrata, who had known the pain of losing his wife, offered Lena not just support, but understanding. What began as respect grew into companionship. And over time, companionship blossomed into love. Together, Lena and Subrata found a rhythm, learning, growing, walking hand in hand on a shared path of faith and purpose. Their bond, forged through trials, would only deepen with time. And so Lena Muller, the girl who once stood on the balcony of luxury, found her peace not in gold or glamour, but in the quiet company of a man of faith, in the whisper of prayer, and in the light of a new path chosen by the heart. She knew that even though her path in life was full of trials, she would never be alone. Days passed with simple routines, but within every moment, Lena felt an inner peace that grew deeper. Subrata had become an inseparable part of her life, not just as a friend or guide, but as someone who brought her a warmth she hadn't known before. That warmth slowly turned into something stronger, something undeniable. One serene morning, months after settling in Papua, Lena walked along the shoreline near her rented home. The sea shimmered in shades of blue, and the breeze brushed gently against her face. This had become her favorite spot, a place to reflect on everything she had been through, the decisions she had made, and how her life had completely transformed. Here, the chaos of her past felt distant. In its place was clarity. For the first time, she felt like she truly knew herself. She took out a notebook from her bag and began writing. Her delicate handwriting documented her spiritual journey, how she had found peace in Islam, how her heart had opened to simple, meaningful things. It was no longer about wealth or prestige. It was about connection, faith, and sincerity. Meanwhile, Subrata was away on assignment. His duties often took him far, sometimes for weeks at a time. Every time he left, Lena felt a quiet void in her chest. But she remained strong, knowing their relationship was built on deep love and unwavering trust. When Subrata returned to Jayapura, he brought unexpected news. "Lena," he said one evening, "I've been assigned to a critical mission. It could be long and dangerous." Lena's heart tightened. "When will you be back?" she asked softly. Subrata looked at her, his expression solemn. "I don't know. This mission isn't like the others." Despite his calm demeanor, Lena could feel his concern. She tried to stay composed, but the fear lingered. What if he didn't come back? What if she lost the one person who gave her strength, peace, and purpose? That night, while writing in her journal, there was a knock at the door. Her heart skipped. But it wasn't Subrata. A man in plain clothes stood before her, face serious. "Are you Lena Muller?" he asked. "Yes," she replied, her voice trembling. "I'm from the military. We need to talk about Subrata." Lena's heart pounded. "What happened?" she whispered. "There was an issue with the mission. He's missing. We're doing everything we can to find him." The words froze her in place. Her breath caught in her chest. She felt time stop. She stood at the doorway, numb, unable to speak, her mind spinning with fear. "Missing?" she repeated, barely audible. "You mean, you don't know where he is?" The officer sighed. "We don't have full details yet. But we're searching. Don't lose hope." But hope was fragile. As the hours turned into days, Lena waited in agony. Her prayers became more frequent, her connection with Allah deeper. She turned to the Qur'an, seeking strength, whispering every verse with trembling lips. Then, after days of silence, a call came. Subrata had been found, injured but alive. Lena rushed to the military hospital, her steps heavy with emotion. When she entered the room, she saw him, bruised, pale, but smiling weakly. "I was so scared," she whispered, gripping his hand. Subrata's voice was hoarse, but steady. "I'm okay. Allah protected me. And I felt your prayers." Lena sat beside him, her eyes brimming. "Whatever happens, we'll face it together. Our faith will carry us through." Subrata nodded. "Yes. Together." As he recovered, their bond only deepened. They talked for hours, about life, about the future, about the love that had grown quietly between them. One quiet evening, as they sat on the porch of their rented home, Subrata took her hand. "Lena," he said gently, "I want us to take the next step. I want to marry you. I want our bond to be not just emotional, but spiritual, sacred." Lena looked at him, stunned and overwhelmed. "I want that too," she whispered, smiling through tears. "Let's build a life full of blessings together." And so, they began to prepare. Their love, born from shared struggles, blossomed into something lasting. Though their worlds were once different, they now shared one vision: faith, peace, and a life devoted to something greater. But not everything was perfect. Lena's family still couldn't accept her decision. Her father, Oliver, remained distant and cold. The man who once controlled her future now refused to even speak to her. Still, Lena hoped. She knew reconciliation wouldn't be easy, but she believed hearts could change. One day, she gathered the courage to call him again. "Dad," she said softly, "can we talk?" Oliver, still firm but no longer yelling, replied, "I don't understand your choices, Lena. But you're still my daughter. I just need time." Those words gave her hope. Not a full acceptance, but a door slightly open. In Jayapura, Lena and Subrata continued preparing for their Nikah. They wanted a wedding that reflected their faith, simple, sincere, and full of meaning. It wouldn't be filled with lights and champagne, but with du'as and heartfelt promises. They were ready, not just to marry each other, but to walk the path of life, hand in hand, with Allah as their guide. Lena stood quietly, her father's words echoing in her heart. He hadn't accepted her path, but he also hadn't shut the door entirely. "You are still my daughter," he had said. Those words, simple yet powerful, were enough to give her hope. Maybe one day he would understand. Maybe love could overcome the differences. Back in Papua, Lena and Subrata began preparing for their nikah. They wanted it to be simple but meaningful, a union not only between two people but two souls striving for the same purpose. Their wedding, attended by close friends and a few local elders, was beautiful in its sincerity. There were no grand halls, no extravagant lights, only heartfelt vows under the open sky. After the wedding, they returned to their quiet life in Jayapura. Their home was modest, but their hearts were full. Subrata, despite his frequent assignments as a Kopassus officer, always made time to be with Lena. They took walks by the sea, discussed dreams for their future, and found joy in the simple moments. Lena, once accustomed to a world of wealth and power, now lived with contentment. Her faith deepened, her understanding of life expanded. She learned to appreciate silence, gratitude, and prayer. Subrata, ever calm and composed, guided her gently in matters of deen and life. They were a team, bound not just by love but by purpose. Still, challenges persisted. Subrata was often called away on dangerous missions, and each time he left, Lena felt a familiar emptiness. She missed him deeply but chose to remain strong. She spent her days in prayer, in learning, and in quietly supporting her husband from afar. One evening, as they sat on the porch under a starry sky, Subrata turned to her and said softly, "Lena, I don't know when I'll return from this next mission. It might take longer than usual." Lena's heart ached, but she nodded. "I understand. Just promise me you'll come back." Subrata took her hand. "I promise. And no matter where I go, I carry your heart with me." After he left, Lena tried to remain strong, but the worry lingered. Then came the news: Subrata had been injured. Her world froze. Without hesitation, she rushed to the hospital. When she saw him, bruised, bandaged, but alive, relief swept through her. "I'm fine," he whispered with a weak smile. Lena clutched his hand, tears welling up. "Don't ever leave me again." Subrata smiled through the pain. "As long as Allah wills, I'll always return to you." Their love grew stronger with every trial. Lena knew that even if her father never fully accepted her decision, she had found something far more valuable, a life filled with peace, faith, and true companionship. Time passed. Subrata continued his duties, and Lena became a quiet pillar of strength. Their lives were not luxurious, but they were meaningful. Each day was a step forward, together. Then one day, her father called. "Lena, I want to visit you in Papua," he said. His voice was hesitant, but sincere. A few days later, Oliver arrived. Their meeting was tense at first, but when they sat across from each other in a quiet cafe, something changed. Oliver looked at his daughter and said, "I still don't understand why you chose this path. But I want to know how you're living now." Lena looked into her father's eyes and said gently, "I chose this because it brought me peace. I finally understand the meaning of life." They didn't resolve everything that day. But it was a start. As the months passed, Subrata and Lena built a life rooted in love and faith. They began a foundation to help orphans and struggling families in Papua. Giving back became their way of showing gratitude to Allah. Each child they helped, each family they supported, felt like a part of their journey. One evening, they sat watching the sun set behind the mountains, children laughing in the distance. "Do you still miss your old life?" Subrata asked. Lena smiled. "Not for a second. I've found my home, with you, with our purpose, and with Allah." Despite the ongoing uncertainty of Subrata's work, they remained united. Each mission tested their strength, but each reunion renewed their bond. Their hearts were anchored in faith, and their love served as a light through every storm. A few years after their marriage, Lena and Subrata's foundation flourished. They continued to live humbly but were surrounded by the warmth of community, gratitude, and purpose. Their story wasn't a fairy tale, it was real. It was about choices, sacrifice, belief, and the quiet strength of two people walking the path of faith together. And so Lena Muller, the once-lost daughter of a billionaire, found her true treasure, not in gold, but in the serenity of faith, the embrace of love, and the unwavering guidance of Allah. This is their journey. A journey of devotion. A journey of peace. A journey toward Jannah.